Welcome, everyone, to the PFF Fantasy Podcast. I am your host, Jon Macri, fantasy analyst here at PFF. And joining me, as will be our new Thursday tradition, no, it's not Nate, but it is Kate, and she is also great, the awesome Kate Magdziuk. Kate, so glad we can get you on the pod. How are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. We have another awesome slate of preseason action to look forward to. Another week of total speculation. The preseason is so bizarre because we finally have these little nuggets of information, but it's kind of all thrown into this wicked stew that you just don't know if it's good or bad. But you're happy to just have something to eat at this point. So it's a hodgepodge, but we've got to take away, something from the preseason. I think we'll still learn a lot in week 2. Hopefully we get some more starters in the mix and more starting players, for longer drives and more drives. So this is going to be a fun week. And I'm excited to dive in. We're going to talk about all the fantasy implications, what we're watching for in each of these games throughout this next preseason week. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah, I think that was a good way of putting it. It's the preseason is definitely strange, right? Because we got to try to figure out, what is real and what isn't. We kind of just have to, piece it all together and read the tea leaves, as you will, as they provide them to us in these small little sample sizes that we get. But it's a fun time of year. It helps us kind of try to figure out at least a few things for what to expect in the season, and then how much of that actually continues into the regular season. So yeah, I'm excited to go through this all with you. I appreciate you coming on. We're definitely lucky for you to be joining us and get your fantasy football insight and knowledge, so we can continue to level up the content here on the PFF Fantasy Podcast. So thank you. And then, like you said, one of the things that we'll be doing, and we'll be doing together every Thursday, previewing the week ahead in the regular season. So we figured we would get things started on the path right away here in preseason week 2, because definitely a ton of stuff to look out for, and still so much to learn about how every team plans to deploy our favorite fantasy options. So should be a lot of fun going game by game, pick something out from each game that we're looking forward to watching. And then we get to sit back, enjoy the game, see what we get to see, and see what they don't tell us as well. So before we get into all of that, I do want to give a quick shout out to one of our presenting sponsor, Fabric by Gerber Life. As a parent, your child's well-being is your top priority. You want to see them chase their dreams, embrace life's adventures, and thrive in this world. But you also know life can be unpredictable, and that's why it's important to plan for the unexpected so they can continue to thrive no matter what. Fabric was designed by parents for parents to help you get a high-quality, surprisingly affordable term life insurance policy in less than 10 minutes. Fabric has flexible policies that fit your family and your budget, with quality policies like $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day. Get your personalized quote in just minutes and then apply when it's convenient for you. It's all online and on your schedule. You can go from start to covered in less than 10 minutes with no health exam required. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to protect their family. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/fantasy. That's meetfabric.com/fantasy. meetfabric.com/fantasy. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company. Not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. All right, let's start things off here with our lone Thursday night game tonight between the Browns and the Eagles. This will be Cleveland's third preseason game already, thanks to the Hall of Fame game. So while we've got a bit more data from them, it still wasn't a ton after the starters have only essentially played one drive through those 2 games. So Kate, we'll all have eyes on this one for this game tonight, but what is it that you will be looking at specifically in this game, and that could potentially give us some more fantasy insight?
I'm looking specifically at Deshaun Watson, who, you look at the box score, completed 3 of his 3 passes, woohoo, for 12 yards, 4 yards per attempt in week 1. That was only ahead of Bryce Young and CJ Stroud among the presumed starters for the 2023 season. Average depth of target, precisely 0.0 yards. Deshaun Watson, he didn't screw anything up, but that's a pretty great thing. Like, I'm not going to give him a pat on the back for that because the Browns didn't ask him to do really anything in week 1 of the preseason. So, like, show me something, Deshaun Watson. We saw a couple of scrambles, which is good, but as a passer, I don't know what to make of Deshaun Watson yet, but he's still being drafted on average as like the QB 11, QB 12 in fantasy drafts. Yeah. There's a really wide range of outcomes here for Deshaun Watson. I don't think we have any more idea now than we did last week about what we're going to see in 2023.
Yeah, this is the huge question mark for the Browns this season, right? Because we saw what he was last season. It wasn't good. That didn't really show a lot of promising signs that he's going to get back on track. But I think a lot of people are banking on him getting back on track because, like you said, that ADP for him among quarterbacks is still pretty high. On some platforms, he's within the top 10. He's like QB9 on some of them. So banking on a big bounce back from Deshaun Watson. He looked a little bit more comfortable, I would say, last game in the pocket and scrambling more so than he did at least last preseason. If you remember, that was also kind of a disaster for him. So, if we start to see him maybe scrambling a bit more, they got some designed runs in there for him as well. I could see the potential, but the thing is he's going to have to be great as a passer, right? Like you said, we only saw, I think, one pass that was beyond the line of scrimmage and it wasn't beyond the sticks either, right? So nothing past a first down marker. So definitely want to see more of that. That'll be something that, yeah, I'm particularly looking forward to as well in this game.
Yeah, I don't want to say I'm expecting the worst from Watson, but yeah, I don't think we've seen really any big flashing moments where we look at Deshaun Watson with the Cleveland Browns and say, that is the quarterback that the Browns traded for. Like, that is the guy that we saw in Houston that made us extend him this bonkers contract. Like, show me something else coming off a career low 51.6 PFF passing grade. Not good, ranked 46 among 48 qualified passers with at least 100 pass attempts in 2022. Like, he was bad. He was, had a relatively high turnover play rate. Like, I want to see more. And, like I was hopeful that Elijah Moore, it seems like that addition, wide receiver from the Jets coming over this offseason, gave them a little bit more creativity. But now Elijah Moore's injured with a rib injury. Mm-hmm. He's been held out of practice. I don't know. I'm just not sold on this team. I think Elijah Moore still has some potential as a fantasy value just based on where he's drafted, but I'm just skeptical overall in this offense outside of Nick Chubb at running back, who I currently have as my RB2 this season.
Nice. I love it. Yeah, there's there's a lot to love about Nick Chubb. I mean, he is going to be the focal point of this offense, I think, good or bad for Deshaun Watson. But yeah, I'm with you. Nick Chubb is definitely the most trustworthy one. And I like it. I like RB2 for him. If he gets some of that passing down work that Kareem Hunt has been dominating the past few years, that could be huge for him. So yeah, we love Nick Chubb here as well. As far as the Eagles go, don't really have any questions about their passing offense. We know Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert are all going to be great. The only question marks I think I have for the Eagles that I kind of want to see more of in this preseason, it has to do with the running backs. Last week, we didn't see Kenneth Gainwell. We didn't see Boston Scott. They were held out. Does that mean they're the potential starters because we got to see Rashad Penny and DeAndre Swift in there? Or was this something that the Eagles coaching staff were trying to do, at least to maybe give us, or at least for them to see guys that they weren't used to seeing in game action, giving them those reps? So I think we get some more clarity this week as well.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a big moment. Now, Gainwell, definitely the more intriguing of the two. Like Boston Scott, I feel like we could look at Boston Scott and say, like, well, this coaching staff already knows Boston Scott inside and out. He's entering his sixth season with the team. So, like, that's good. Kenneth Gainwell, I think they're still probably trying to figure out, like, what is his role. But the fact that he didn't play and he's been seeing so much work here in like all throughout training camp, didn't play in the preseason. Then you see Rashad Penny, who I think everybody, sees a ton of potential in despite the injuries, played 2 more drives after the starters left week 1 preseason. So like was lingering around a little bit longer than you'd like to see him. I think Gainwell might actually be a really interesting value this year if things continue on course.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think we talked about this in our preseason recap too. At the very least, Gainwell should be considered draftable at this point because he was going undrafted a lot of the time. And Rashad Penny, that usage is slightly telling, right, for how they might view these guys. So something to keep an eye out there for the Eagles. But let's head into Friday's games now. We have two games on the schedule. So let's start with Carolina Panthers at the New York Giants. We got to see Bryce Young last week in limited action with just 7 dropbacks and going for, what did he go? 4 for 6 for a whopping 21 yards. So not the greatest sample size to tell us what to expect from him in his rookie season. We know he'll be the week 1 starter, but maybe the question is who will be the primary receiving targets this season for Bryce Young?
Yeah, I'm kind of interested to see, like we talked about, like is which one of these Panthers wide receivers is going to, lead the team in targets. I think it's DJ Chark, but what if the Panthers wide receiver 1 isn't a wide receiver at all? What if it's tight end Hayden Hurst? Because led the team with 7 routes run, played every single snap alongside Bryce Young. Only other skill player to do that with the starters was running back Chuba Hubbard. PFF projections have Hayden Hurst as the tight end 12 this year, and he's being like basically undrafted in most leagues right now based on his ADP. Like I think being drafted as tight end 24, 25. Like we could be looking at a massive value with the Carolina Panthers. And like if I'm a rookie quarterback, I want to find that big boy tight end across the middle of the field as often as possible because I can lob it up. I don't necessarily have to be right on target if I'm finding this big giant man in Hayden Hurst. He's not a great blocker historically. Like the Panthers signed him to be a receiver. I think they kind of took that same path that the Giants did, actually, like in terms of in a very terrible wide receiver free agency class. They took like a little mini cheat code and signed a receiving tight end instead in Hayden Hurst. Same way Giants traded for Darren Waller. So I think that's going to be like the most interesting thing for me to watch. Like, any edge that we can get at tight end is paramount. Because it's Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, and kind of the rest of the world. So
right.
Maybe Hurst could be a really interesting value, and I would not be surprised at all if he leads this team in receiving this year.
I like it. Yeah, I'm with you. I think Hurst is a really great value for the tight end position, especially like you said, when you kind of consider like the ambiguity of this wide receiver position in Carolina. These guys might rotate in and out. We saw Adam Thielen working in the slot in 11 personnel as well. Terrace Marshall's dealing with an injury. So you got guys with like DJ Chark, but then unprovens like Jonathan Mingo and Terrace Marshall as well. So Hayden Hurst could very well become that reliable target for Bryce Young. And if I think you're right. I think there's definitely a range of outcomes that has Hayden Hurst leading this team in targets this season. So I like the call.
It's not necessarily going to be like pretty or fun to
right.
watch, but I don't care if my fantasy points are pretty. I care if they win me championships. So we got to take our lumps when we can.
Exactly. It all looks the same in the win column by the end of the season. All right, looking at the Giants. For me, I was just kind of looking mostly at their wide receivers. I mean, we didn't see Darius Slayton or Paris Campbell last week, and Isaiah Hodgins did play, so that could be a sign that he's not considered among the starters. So really, I think Darren Waller. You mentioned it as well. I think he has a decent chance to lead this Giants team in targets by the end of the year as long as he's healthy. So this is a wide receiver core that I'm hoping to just see kind of some consistency and reliability from at the very most. So hopefully Darius Slayton and Paris Campbell work in here so we could kind of see what the usage ends up being here. But Darren Waller is still my favorite receiving option for this Giants offense.
Yeah, I think they literally saw the free agent market of wide receivers and they said, you know what? We're going to pass. And you know what? Like you can't blame them from like a football management standpoint, like a team management standpoint. Tight ends get paid a lot less than wide receivers. So like you're you're really getting the most bang from your buck in terms of like if you're signing Darren Waller to be a primary pass catcher for your offense, and he's versatile enough, he's big enough to play tight end, like you're really just kind of getting a cheat code, and you're still getting one of the better receivers in the league, and you're saving a nice chunk of money if he can stay healthy. If
That's the big thing. That's always going to be the big question mark with Waller, right? And why people are kind of afraid of him a little bit. But look, he's going to be out there week 1, and then we just keep plugging him in until he tells us he's not healthy enough to be started otherwise. But I'm with
all
you
in.
there. Yeah, that's it. There's nobody else on this team I think that has a better shot to lead the team in receiving than Darren Waller. I believe it was Saquon Barkley led the team last year, but I think Waller will take that over if he's playing every game.
Oh yeah, first, like 100% lock it, throw away the key. That's happening.
Love it. All right, let's go to our other Friday game. Should also be pretty interesting since we're expected to get the Falcons starters for the first time this preseason after they all sat out week 1. So a number of things we should learn there between Desmond Ridder, Bijan Robinson, how healthy is Kyle Pitts, things like that. Kate, Bijan has been a pretty hot fantasy topic already this offseason. I know Nate and I both have him as RB3 heading into the year. Where are you putting the rookie running back in your ranks?
I've also got him at RB3, but I am curious as to who your RB2 is, because I mentioned mine earlier, Nick Chubb. I have a feeling maybe your RB2 is Austin Eckler. Is that right?
It is Austin Eckler. Yeah,
Okay.
that's right. Yeah.
So I shook things up just very slightly here. Like I got a little bit spicy, but like maybe like a habanero instead of a ghost pepper. Like that's where we're headed here.
Yeah, fair enough.
I think this is going to be like such a fun offense to watch. I've always liked Desmond Ridder probably a little bit better than I should have. I just thought coming out of Cincinnati, a solid decision maker, like this offense. I mean, if he can't do it with this core of weapons, he's not going to be able to do it at all. But Bijan Robinson, going to be super interesting to see if he plays, or if he, how long he plays, what he looks like. I think we all know what to expect though. So what I'm really interested to see is if Algier mixes in with Bijan with the starters at all. Like wasn't active for week 1's preseason game against the Dolphins at all. And I think, from a fantasy perspective, we've largely assumed that this is just the Bijan Robinson show, but I do think we need to temper those expectations, not temper expectations for Bijan, but maybe raise our expectations for Tyler Algier, because this is a very run heavy team. We saw Cordell Patterson last year get 144 rush attempts. If we're slotting Tyler Algier in for those, like, I think, we might be getting a value towards the end of our drafts if we're taking a shot on the backup running back in this very productive Falcons rushing offense.
Yeah, I'm with you. And it's definitely something I think to kind of consider as a possibility for this season, right? And I know a lot of people out there who follow the team closely. I was on the Locked On Falcons podcast, and they were talking about how they do expect it to be more of a timeshare between Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier, at least for this season, right? So it was something that they showed last year, but then you have Arthur Smith, who's also shown a tendency to deploy a workhorse role when he was with the Titans, and Derrick Henry. So I could see there being a case for either way. I tend to be a believer that Bijan's going to get the large majority of the touches, which is why I have him ranked as RB3, but definitely have an open mind if we do see that Tyler Algier usage, if we see him kind of mix in there a little bit this week. It could be a little bit concerning and something to kind of consider as we work through our rankings as we get closer to the season. And Tyler Algier, absolutely a guy that's going way past the top 10 rounds in drafts that we can take a shot on as well. Even if he's just the handcuff, it could be a very high-end handcuff.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the case. Falcons had a 90.6 PFF rushing grade last year. That was the 5th best in the league, led the NFL in run blocking grade. Like, I don't expect them to take, really any steps back there. I think that the offense is going to be extremely productive on the ground. And I think, right now I'm projecting Bijan for a chunk of it, but I just feel like we've been taking that information for granted right now instead of actually seeing how it's going to play
Mhm.
out. And I'm leaving the door open. Like I'm just
Yeah.
cracking it open just a little bit, just to see what if anything, because we know Arthur Smith likes to break hearts. Like
Yeah.
he doesn't care about our fantasy teams. This isn't fantasy football.
Yeah, as he said before, with when we get frustrated over the Kyle Pitts usage, right? So it's definitely we definitely need to keep our minds open with this one and be ready to kind of come off of those priors a little bit if we do start to see evidence of the contrary that Bijan isn't a workhorse role, right? So definitely something to watch out for this preseason. And yeah, the Bengals, nothing too interesting. We know what that offense is. I guess the only other thing was the potential RB2 behind Joe Mixon. Travion Williams, I think, was potentially going to be that guy, but he was out last week with a sprained ankle. I don't know if we'll see him or not. And then we kind of saw Chris Evans and Chase Brown rotate in and out from drive to drive, but Chris Evans had started the game, so nothing overly interesting with the Bengals. But there is a potential for who could be the RB2 behind Joe Mixon there.
Yeah, interesting news coming out of like the Joe Mixon camp here, was found not guilty of some of these legal charges that were of concern. I think, Joe Mixon came in, took a pay cut to remain with the team, but there was still this lingering question. There were some legal charges brought against him. Were
Mhm.
these going to be anything like that could be concerning for his on the field status during the year? It seems like that shouldn't be an issue this year. So I feel like every week that goes by, I feel less concerned about the competition at RB2, just because it seems like things are on track for Joe Mixon to remain on the field as long as he's healthy this season, with some of these extraneous storylines sort of slowly clearing out.
Yeah, there was a lot with Joe Mixon this offseason. It's been a roller
Just swimming
coaster
through the
for sure.
weeds. I was
Oh my God.
exhausted.
I know. It's crazy. And yeah, now again, as we get closer to the season and he continues to kind of dodge these bullets, no pun intended.
Oh
He
no.
moves. I know. I honestly didn't mean to do it, but as
Oh my gosh.
as he kind of, the situation with him kind of clears up a little bit, I think we could potentially see his ADP rise a little bit as well, especially as there's other question marks with some of these other running backs in that range. So something to keep an eye out there. Bad puns aside.
Welcome to the PFF fantasy
There
show,
it is.
people.
Yeah.
This is we're here we have fun here. This is a good
Yeah.
time.
The pun football focus. I
Wow.
know it
Okay.
just
Like
keeps
I
on
think we
coming.
should,
It keeps
yeah, just end the show here.
yeah.
Like just end the show here. Let's end on a high note. And
Yeah. Two
yeah.
games worth of recaps and we are done.
Boom.
All right, let's get into Saturday. So this is the large majority of these week 2 preseason games when they'll be played. We'll start things off with the Jacksonville Jaguars squaring off against America's team, the Detroit Lions. Unfortunately, Jameson Williams likely to miss the rest of the preseason on top of his 6-game suspension to start the regular season. This one was a major bummer for me because I had high hopes for him, but being relegated to the second team last preseason game and not looking great, plus, now missing all these much needed reps that he's going to need. I'm concerned we may not get a viable, like fantasy relevant JMO until late this year at best. But other than that, there are still a decent amount of storylines to keep an eye on in this game. Which one are you kind of looking forward to seeing the most?
I'm kind of looking to see, which of these players especially the rookies, Jameer Gibbs, Sam Laporta, which of these guys is going to make the most of these opportunities. Jameson Williams, we're not going to see him till almost end of October, right? Like, first of all, is he even worth drafting at all in fantasy? I say no. Any thoughts? Is he
I
worth
haven't been
drafting?
drafting him at all. It
Okay.
just feels way too risky at this point.
Way too risky. And having that player eat up a bench spot for 6 weeks when you don't even know what he's going to look like when he gets back. Is he fully healthy? At least he has 6 games to rest. So that's something. But yeah, I want to see who's making the most of these opportunities with him out. Or is it just Amon-Ra St. Brown over and over and over and over again? Like, this, honestly, I think this is probably more underrated news for St. Brown than anybody else in this offense, but definitely I think worth taking an extra look, especially at Sam Laporta, who already seems to have this starting job in the bag.
Yeah, Laporta's looked good. And yeah, he does seem to be locked into the first team offense, which you love to see. Jahmyr Gibbs probably gets some of the receiving work as well, or should get a lot of the receiving work. But yeah, Amon-Ra St. Brown. We talked about him yesterday on the podcast. This guy is a potential league winner for this year. So we're all in on him. And yeah, there could be I think there's other viable Lions receiving options over Jameson Williams, like the guys you said, Sam Laporta and Jahmyr Gibbs. I would take over him as well.
Yeah,
For the
I think that's a
Jaguars,
fair
yeah,
breakdown.
yeah. Jaguars, we got, what do we think? Travis Etienne versus Tank Bigsby. So this is the one that I've kind of been, calling the Tank Biggie Bigsby versus Travis Tupac Etienne rivalry here, because it's split the fantasy community a little bit. And we did see Bigsby work in with the starters, even though Etienne technically started the game, and Bigsby got that short yardage work as well, which has always been kind of the thought process once we saw this situation happen during the draft, where the Jaguars took Bigsby on day 2. So concerned a little bit about Etienne. I don't love him as a 3rd round pick. I would push him a little bit further back than that, and I like Tank Bigsby a little bit. But how about you? Anything with the Jaguars stand out, or are you interested in this Tank Bigsby versus Etienne saga?
I am actually. So a few weeks ago, I actually wrote Travis Etienne up as a fade at his current ADP. He was hanging right around RB10. You sometimes see him, fluctuate right around that zone. But I mean, by all accounts, like the draft capital, like 3rd round draft capital, not too shabby at all for what was considered a really deep running back class. And he's got like the build, like he's a really tough runner, average 5.5 yards per carry, 4.16 yards after contact per attempt in his final year at Auburn. Like he has a big boy frame, 6 foot, 210 pounds, like that, paired with the fact that like Etienne, for as much as we've touted him as, like a potential number 1 target for Trevor Lawrence, he saw a 7.8% target share. That was super, super, super disappointing. 11 fantasy points per game, ranked 27th among running backs. Like Etienne, just based on his own performance, was pretty disappointing, I think, in 2022. Granted, it was essentially his rookie season, but like, you add in Calvin Ridley, that's not going to help his target share. You add in Tank Bigsby, I don't think that's going to help in terms of getting those valuable touches in the end zone, like inside the 5. Like I out on that. But I think the most underrated point there that Nate made was that I think he said Bigsby was the only rookie that saw snaps while the starter was still in the game, and that is such a, just I think, an underrated fact coming out of week 1 of the preseason. And box score watchers, you might not appreciate that, that split between Etienne and Bigsby, but I do think that there's something real there. I don't think it's not nothing, if that makes sense. That's going to be something to watch. I think, just generally speaking, this is going to be a high scoring offense, but there's still a lot to learn about how Trevor Lawrence is going to distribute this target share and how these points are actually going to get scored.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm 100% with you. Like you said, high scoring offense, but Bigsby, if he starts to eat up a lot of that short yardage and goal line work, that takes a lot of those kind of high value fantasy touches away from Etienne, who was particularly ineffective, I'll say, in those situations last year. A lot of people bring up Kenneth Walker and his stuffed run rate and things like that. Travis Etienne was second behind him in stuffed run rate last season, and then he was even worse at the goal line. He just could not punch it in. So them bringing in a Tank Bigsby, I think, makes a lot of sense. I mean, the man's name is Tank, so if he can't punch it in at the goal line, like it's not going to be Travis Etienne over Tank, I think, at the goal line. So these things absolutely matter for Etienne's fantasy value this year. I think it hurts him a fair bit, but it also makes Tank Bigsby a particularly interesting sleeper potentially for fantasy football. Right. Next up is the Bills and the Steelers game. Kate, you're a Steelers fan. I see a terrible towel behind you there. So I'll
Yes.
want to get your insight for sure on this kind of shared running back usage that we've been rumored to see this offseason between Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. And we did see Najee start the game, but he shared the first drive with Warren, who came in on kind of those longer down and distance passing down plays, and then shared more time after that on first downs as well. So any concern about Najee Harris, who is going as RB11 in about the third round of drafts right now, and any concern that Warren could hurt that return on investment this season?
I'm feeling kind of good about Najee Harris this year. First off, you have the addition of like Broderick Jones on the offensive line, addition of Darnell Washington, who's going to be just I think a threat to be reckoned with in the run blocking scheme there in Pittsburgh. Like, I think all moves and things are moving in Najee's favor. Actually, like I understand that Warren has been a really solid change of pace guy, but we do this every year, guys. Like, when are we going to be tired of projecting an RB2 to come up behind the intended starter in Pittsburgh to take over the workload? Like, we've literally done this, I think, every season since the Lev Bell incident. Like, it has been nonstop. I think Warren's such an explosive player. I think he brings a very different element to the run game than Najee Harris does. Last year was dealing with Liz Frank injury suffered in training camp. Weeks 1 through 8, like, was not good by any means. Like, there were times where they were like, are we going to bench Najee Harris? It was that bad, averaging 3.3 yards per carry. But team had a week 9 bye. He stopped playing. He had like the steel plate in his shoe. Came back after the bye, averaged almost 20 touches per game, 4.1 yards per carry compared to the 3.3. Still not fantastic, but was the RB5 to close out the season, only behind CMC, Jacobs, Eckler, Pollard. And that was when we actually saw an uptick in usage from Jaylen Warren. Like, the Steelers, I think, showed us after the bye that it's not a one or the other. It can be both. And, like in that, you know, last 6 games of the season, Warren got some work, but still only on pace for 110 total rushing attempts. Like, I think that's very within the realm of possibility. And I don't think a change of pace back is bad for somebody who's kind of struggled with that inefficiency. Keep his legs fresh. Like, I don't think you need to give Najee, give him fewer touches, and the touches you give him, especially behind a better run blocking unit, as I'm projecting them to be, we might see a little bit of increased efficiency, which is what everybody's been starving for. I think, yeah, I'm still in on Najee Harris, and I'm kind of surprised. I had him ranked as my overall RB1 last year. I got burned. Bad, but I'm ready to get hurt again.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. Look, I mean,
Am
this
I being a
offense,
homer? Am I
you
being a
know
homer?
what? No, I I could see the case for Najee Harris there, to still have a great year. I know. Look, for me, I'm projecting this Steelers offense to be much better than what they were last year. I think there's a lot of room for positive regression in at least touchdown scoring across the board, not just Deontay Johnson, but you got guys like George Pickens and Kenny Pickett, who I think should have much better years here in year 2. And if this offense does get better, Najee Harris can absolutely be a beneficiary of that, especially if they're able to get more opportunities in the red zone near the goal line. So yeah, I've been particularly high on this offense overall all off season. So I try not to, say that they're all going to be great. So I always end up tending to be lower on one guy, just to kind of even it out. So it always ends up being Najee Harris because of the
Oh,
concern for, I know, because of the concern that he'll share touches with Jaylen Warren. But look, I'm not saying that I'm going to be right about George Pickens or Deontay Johnson either, right? It could go either way here, where we see it be Najee Harris that's the prime beneficiary. It's just, I think there's a lot of meat left on the bone for this offense, and Najee Harris could definitely be a beneficiary.
well, and I think week 2, like, we saw literally, I think, 7 pass attempts from Kenny Pickett in week 1.
Yeah.
They played one offensive drive. Mike Tomlin already came out. He said the starters are going to play. Probably we're going to see more from them. He didn't say how much more. So, like, more might just mean 2 drives. Like
Right.
I'm sure it depends on what they see out of the team, what, are all of the Bills defenders starting. Like I don't know all that just yet, but um, I think let's continue building on that sample size and see, get a better idea of what situations they're putting Najee Harris in versus Jalen Warren. Are they ever on the field at the same time? Like, is Matt Canada going to go crazy? Like,
Right.
I don't know. I feel like we need to actually see what this offense is going to look like, and get a few more reps under our belt in the preseason to have a real feel for how we can actually project the split. Right now, I'm not concerned.
Yeah, that's fair. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it because this is obviously a very smart team behind Mike Tomlin. And I wouldn't put anything past them. I mean, if they use these guys situationally, that's a potential. But if they lean on Najee Harris, the way that you're expecting, I wouldn't be surprised by that either. So definitely something to keep an eye out here for against the Bills. And then speaking of the Bills, the main thing that at least I'm looking for here is the tight end usage. So we only got the first 2 drives with the quote unquote starters in this one, and it was just like 3 snaps per drive. So the first one gave us Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid on the field at the same time, which each of them having lined up as an inline tight end for those 3 straight run plays that they did. And then the Bills started the second drive with another run play, which only had Dawson Knox in an inline tight end run blocking role. And then the next 2 plays in 11 personnel was where we saw Dalton Kincaid come in for Knox, lining up in the slot with only one of those being a pass play. So super small sample, obviously, but Kincaid being the primary receiving tight end based on this information is kind of what I'm getting here. But I want to see more of that. I don't want to base it on just this one tiny little drive's worth of sample. I want to see a few drives worth of that to kind of lock it in, because I think there's potential for Dalton Kincaid to be a very good fantasy tight end this year, rookie tight end history aside.
Yeah, I worry, I think, a little bit more just than the general consensus. Like, obviously people are feeling pretty comfortable right now, on ESPN ADP being drafted right now as the tight end 14,
Mhm.
well ahead of Dawson Knox going at the tight end 20. Now, for value, I'd prefer to look at like a Sam Laporta, tight end
Mhm.
19 right now on ESPN Fantasy ADP, going several rounds later. Um, Dalton Kincaid, I do think that like the biggest threat, obviously there are a lot of very viable targets. Stephon Diggs still going to be the 101. Then you have Gabe Davis, who continues to churn out play after play, and he's like the George Pickens light of training camp highlights.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of options here. My biggest concern with Kincaid is, I think we've seen a nice rapport from Josh Allen and Dawson Knox, especially in the red zone. Does that limit his fantasy upside paired with the number of other targets? I'm just a little bit cooler on Kincaid,
Yeah.
but not from a talent perspective, but from a opportunity perspective, especially in year one. But definitely, I think, got to see how this is shaking out, and it's going to be something I'm watching closely.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think there's a decent chance that Dawson Knox still gets those red zone and end zone targets because of his success doing so in the past, along with Josh Allen. So it's definitely a concern as far as Kincaid's ceiling goes if he loses a lot of those high value opportunities in that area of the field. So yeah, another thing to watch out there for sure. All right, let's go to Tampa Bay and the Jets. Baker Mayfield looked good last week, and that was without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. We know Russell Gage is likely done for the year after a non-contact knee injury yesterday, and Nate had talked about Devin Tompkins potentially taking over that wide receiver 3 role in this offense. So that's kind of the thing that I'll be looking for specifically here was this team spent a lot of time in 11 personnel last season. So I think there could be a role there, especially if Mayfield looks as good as he did last week. And I know it's the preseason, so whatever, but if he can move the ball through the air effectively, Tompkins could be someone keeping an eye on in those deeper leagues. But how about you? Anyone on either team here that you're looking for to watch in this one?
Yeah, I'm not like, I'm going to be honest. This is probably one of the games that I'm just like
Yeah.
not going to be super super high on. I don't think there's going to be a ton that I'm taking away, even from like a wide receiver 3 perspective. I just worry with Baker Mayfield that it might not mean much on a consistent basis. Chase Edmonds says they say he's the early favorite for like third down work at running back, but we saw Rashad White get some targets last year. Like how much does a wide receiver 3 mean, especially with Baker Mayfield in at quarterback? I don't know. Do we know is Dalvin Cook going, or Dalvin Cook's out, right? Do we know, is there any chance in the entire world that we see Breece Hall this week?
I would be shocked if we saw Breece Hall in this game. I think they'd rather be cautious with him just coming off the injury, but it would be nice, but I don't know.
It'd
I'd
be
feel better if
fun.
they just left him out. Yeah.
Yeah, see, like there's just nothing to like.
Yeah.
That would be the one thing I'd want to look for. I know it's like a fat chance because he just came off the PUP, but that'd be the only thing that I'm really super eager to be seeing, just given, the personnel they're employing. I just don't think that there's a ton here for fantasy, but there's still a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
Still a lot.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, sorry, Tampa Bay and the Jets. We will move on. We'll catch you on Hard Knocks. But let's do a quick ad read here. And this one is our friends at DraftKings. This season, DraftKings has launched the largest best ball tournament in DraftKings history. Right now, you can enter into DraftKings best ball tournament for a shot at over $10 million in guaranteed cash prizes. Make your entry into the draft today. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the NFL season without having to worry about managing your roster, waiver wires, and more. To start playing best ball, download the DraftKings app using code PFF, enter DraftKings Best Ball Millionaire Contest, and snake draft your team for the season. Each week, you'll automatically rack up points from all your top scorers. No ads, drops, trades, or I should have played him instead. Teams with the most points by the end of the season will have a shot to take home the $1 million top prize. So what are you waiting for? Head to the DraftKings app and sign up with code PFF and start playing best ball today. Join the DraftKings $10 million best ball tournament only on DraftKings with code PFF. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See DraftKings.com for details. All right, Bears and Colts. This should be a really fun game. We're expected to get Justin Fields versus Anthony Richardson, two electric runners of the ball at the quarterback position. A-Rich was named the team's week 1 starter this past week, so that'll definitely be exciting to see right out the gate in week 1. The big question for me is, can Justin Fields continue to throw for negative air yards and keep his perfect passer rating? No, I'm kidding. Kate, we had what was a potentially ambiguous backfield in Chicago kind of sorted already last week. And then the other thing is we probably shouldn't expect Jonathan Taylor in this game, of course, for the Colts. So as far as either team's running back situation goes, which one are you more interested in watching for this game?
I think I'm more interested in the Bears side of things, actually. And I know that we kind of already had these questions here answered. Khalil Herbert played 100% of the snaps with Justin Fields on the field. That's like kind of a stamp in the win column for Khalil Herbert, who already has been extremely productive, like led the league in yards per attempt last year, like most underrated stat that I can pull from 2022. Just he's been incredibly efficient. He's been super elusive in terms of like the work that he's actually gotten as a starter. Now, just hasn't had a ton of opportunities. Now we've seen Roschon Johnson have plenty of reports this week that he's getting work in with the first team, but I want to see one more week. Is it still Khalil Herbert 100% of the time, or was this a Roschon Johnson? Like I thought it was a little weird. He played, all the way through the fourth quarter. That seemed like a little bit longer than I would have expected if he's really just kind of paying his dues and, taking his lumps as a rookie. Like I want to see one more week of how this shakes out. But interestingly, and I don't know how interesting this is, Zach Moss still listed as the RB2 on this depth chart. I know he's dealing with a broken arm for the Colts, but, not a lower body injury, which is good. He can still, generally like stay conditioned. If he could come back here pretty soon, like if, we got another report today, what was it? Adam Schefter was on the Pat McAfee show talking about how like this situation just continues to disintegrate. Like day over day. It just does
Mhm.
not sound good. Um, is there a possibility that Zach Moss is still the running back that we want to roster on this team if he comes back and he can get healthy at the start of the season?
I mean, I wouldn't rule it out, right? Like they have kind of a lot of unprovens at the position right now that are getting the starting reps, right? Evan Hull, the rookie, started last week over Deion Jackson. They kind of alternated drives as well, but then they signed Kenyon Drake, but he didn't play until like the third quarter of last last game either. So he didn't get a real opportunity to start either. So as this Jonathan Taylor situation kind of continues to unravel and get potentially worse, who knows what's going to happen for week one. I'm kind of hoping that we get to see him week one and that the situation clears itself up, but there's a lot of question marks right now. So paying attention to who ends up being that RB2 or the next man up for the Colts could end up being a potentially very strong value for fantasy football as well.
Yeah, I think I mean just paying attention to what's on the field, but also I'm watching this Jonathan Taylor stuff like
Mhm.
super closely because it doesn't feel like it's really headed in the right direction, especially after leaving the team again for personal. I don't know. I'm not in the locker room. I don't know what's there, but I mean, what I do know is that Jonathan Taylor's still being drafted as an RB1 and he's missed, like even when people have seen him at practice, he's not practicing, but they say he doesn't, I've heard reports he doesn't necessarily look super healthy, even though he's not even practicing. Like it just
Oh,
feels like that's a situation that I would rather avoid entirely for my fantasy football teams. And I want that to be somebody else's problem. And I'm going to pass on my fantasy drafts, even as he continues to fall down these draft boards. Cause
yeah.
it over the last week, dropped on average 7 total spots in ESPN drafts.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. He's still super risky, even if he's a second round pick, right? So maybe the third you take a shot on him, but there's a lot of red flags surrounding Jonathan Taylor in this for this season. So who knows? Maybe they trade him or something like that. But right now, still a lot of question marks surrounding him. Let's go to the Kansas City Chiefs at the Arizona Cardinals. Interestingly, Andy Reid suggested that we could see Kansas City starters play the whole first half in this game. I don't know if that will include Mahomes and Kelsey the entire time, but should at least give us a better indication of maybe what to expect from the Chiefs wide receiver core. So it seems like everyone has their favorite Kansas City wide receiver, whether it's Kadarius Toney or Marquez Valdez-Scantling or Sky Moore, or even Justin Ross. How about you, Kate? Is there a wide receiver in this offense that you're trying to target maybe more than others?
Ugh. I honestly, I feel like I haven't fallen in love with any of them. And if I'm going to take a shot on one, it's probably going to be my good friend. I don't even want to say like a name because I don't want to take a shot on it. That's the
Fair.
thing. Okay. So that's where I'm at with this entire offense. I don't want to take a shot. Like I can say a name. I can say like, I think MVS will probably, maybe lead the receiving core in terms of receiving yards, like maybe Sky. I can project all this, but I think it's all going to be meaningless, generally speaking. I think what we're going to see is a lot of Travis Kelsey. I think we're going to see a lot of continued rotation from
Mhm.
Patrick Mahomes. Like he's going like what we saw last year when he didn't have, a wide receiver one and Tyreek Hill. He just spread the ball around. Like there wasn't, it wasn't the which guy is going to now be Patrick Mahomes' favorite target. They all were. Like it just it was a total disbursement. I think probably Rashi Rice would be like my like gun to my head. You have to pick one. But I don't know. It got 7 snaps last week with the starters out of 9 total starting snaps. Um, you know, ran just 2 routes. Like I don't know. I don't want any of these guys. I feel like I'm gonna have a headache
Yeah.
managing any of these wide receivers on a day to day. But let me tell you who it's not. It is not Kadarius Toney, and I will not touch him with a 10-foot pole in my fantasy drafts.
Yeah,
No
that
freaking thank you.
yeah. That's the one, man. There's that he just can't seem to stay on the field for many different reasons. And I'm with you. I think there's definitely going to be a rotation here. So it's hard to kind of, pinpoint one exact player to target. I'm with you. I've mostly been avoiding the group. I might take a shot on whoever ends up becoming the cheapest of the group if I kind of like them late in drafts or something like that, but not overly invested in a wide receiver for the Chiefs this year. For the Cardinals, nothing that I'm super interested in either. Maybe the quarterback situation. I figure Colt McCoy's the kind of clear favorite right now to start week 1, but Clayton Tune remains a player I'm interested in, and I hope can win out. But we don't need to spend much time on that. Let's just move on from the Cardinals.
Poor Cardinals. Sorry,
I know.
guys.
Yeah, it's not looking
Yeah, I
good for
agree.
them this year.
You know what? The beauty, you guys can try again next year. Try again.
Exactly. Yeah, you might have the first overall pick after all.
Yeah.
So let's go to the Patriots and Packers. We didn't see Mac Jones or any of the Patriots expected starters last week. Maybe we get him for a short stint in this game. With the Zeke signing, we probably don't have to be overly concerned about watching who the Patriots RB2 is anymore either. So anything in this game that's on your fantasy football watch list?
Yeah, I want to see what Jordan Love looks like. Like I've been
Mm-hmm.
generally hesitant about the pass catchers here in Green Bay, just with the question marks at quarterback. I want to see a little bit more from Jordan Love. I want to see more comfort in this offense. I want to see but yeah, I just want to feel more comfortable drafting receivers on the receiving end. I still think the battle between Romeo Dobbs and Christian Watson is something interesting, especially now that like Luke Musgrave has been probably one of the most like hyped and probably not talked enough about rookies in fantasy circles specifically because not necessarily a guy that had a ton of consistent opportunities in college, but like he's, I think profiling as a receiving option for him. They targeted him in the second round, knowing that he wasn't a big blocker. Like
Mm-hmm.
it seems destined that he is going to have a mark on this passing offense. Um, so like he's another one that I kind of want to watch, but I just want to see more of how these targets are distributed and what this offense and its chemistry looks like. I need more.
Sure. Yeah, the Packers are definitely the more interesting team here. And you're right. Jordan Love is the focal point kind of. I think, he looked fine last week, 7 for 10, 46 yards, a touchdown. But I'm very high on Luke Musgrave, or have been since the draft. And he's been somebody that I really do have hopes for, that he could become a very good fantasy tight end. But yeah, Watson and Dubs, they seem to be the wide receiver 1 and 2 there. Jaden Reed worked in as the wide receiver 3 and 11 personnel. So that receiving core is already starting to kind of take shape without Aaron Rodgers there. And Jordan Love is going to be the big question mark. What can he do to distribute targets to those guys to make them all fantasy relevant, or at least make 1 or 2 of them fantasy relevant for this season? So definitely interesting to see what Jordan Love does this preseason as well. All right, keeping it going with these Saturday games. I think maybe the most interesting thing for the Titans right now is kind of who can emerge behind Derrick Henry for that RB2 role. I've been a big fan of Tyjae Spears this offseason, and he got to outperform Hassan Haskins on that first drive last week. From at least an efficiency standpoint, they had the same amount of carries. So while Derrick Henry expected to continue as a high-end workhorse running back for them this season, I think there's also the chance that he could potentially get traded this year, which has been rumored as well. And if that were to happen, then whoever that handcuff ends up being could be significantly valuable for fantasy and worth taking a shot on late in drafts. And Spears looks like he has a pretty good chance to be that guy. So that's the one that I'm most interested in for this game. But how about you? Anything from the Vikings or the Titans that you'd like to look out for?
Interested to see, I definitely think the running back situation there, like you said, Derrick Henry, it wouldn't at all surprise me if they did move on. Although I don't know if the acquisition of DeAndre Hopkins like changes
Mm-hmm.
that for them. Like, do they suddenly see themselves as a contender and now they need to keep Henry? Who knows? But I think that there's going to be, you know, I want to see more about how this team is utilizing Jordan Addison. Now it's going to be hard because like TJ Hawkinson, has been like limited, and there were he's got like an ear infection. So I think he's going to be
Hmm.
out this game, but like I want to see eventually. I'm still not sure how this offense and the target distribution is going to work when we have all of these players on the field and looking totally healthy. But something I think that really stood out to me last week. Ty Chandler looked like far and away like the best
Mm-hmm.
RB2 on that offense. Like Alexander Madison, didn't get a ton of work when he was working behind Dalvin Cook, but I think there's definitely a tier break between Dalvin Cook and the Alexander Madison. Like there's going to
Yeah.
be, I think, a little bit more work for the RB2 in Minnesota this year than maybe there has been in years past. Ty Chandler, I think like box score a lot less impressive than how he looked on a down to down basis. So excited to keep watching that. If Ty Chandler has another solid game, I think this RB2 job is his. And again, might be one of these players that I consider as a late round flyer, with my last pick in my redraft leagues this year.
Nice. Yeah, that's a great call for sure. Chandler absolutely looked good last week, so that was nice to see. But yeah, definitely a little bit concerning for potential Alexander Madison value this year. All right, let's do one more ad read today, and this is from the good folks over at Manscaped. If you haven't heard already, it's Smooth Sack Summer. When you're playing in the summer sun, make sure you're scaped from pubes to bum. That's right, this is the summer to keep your balls cool while still looking hot with Manscaped. The leaders in below the waist grooming are making sure we all have a ball this summer by giving our pants partners everything they need to stay fresh. Dive headfirst into Smooth Sack Summer by going to manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping with our code PFF. The Manscaped Performance Package 4.0 has everything you need to prepare that summer bod. They have built the ultimate grooming bundle for your summer grooming. Their Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. The Lawnmower 4.0 has a 7,000 RPM motor, a new multifunction on-off switch, can engage a travel lock, and gives you the ability to turn the 4000K LED spotlight on and off when needed for a more precise shave. Did I mention this trimmer is waterproof too? Beach, lake, or shower, this razor will devour even the strongest pubes. Manscaped even threw in 2 free gifts to the Performance Package 4.0, the Manscaped Boxers and Shed Travel Bag. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code PFF at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code PFF at manscaped.com. It's Smooth Sack Summer, boys. Get on board or get left behind. All right. Let us go to Dolphins Texans. This one potential to be interesting as well, especially after last week and the Devon A chain usage being concerning there as far as how late it was that he entered the game with Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson already out of the game. So hopefully we maybe get some more insight into the backfield here because it could clear up some, I think, pretty big ADP discrepancies there. So there's something to watch at least there in Miami. We also have some intrigue at the Texans wide receiver position to keep us invested over there. Anyone that you want to keep a watchful eye on in this game?
Definitely want to watch Tank Dell, who I think generally speaking, everybody was super excited after his week 1 performance. But what I want to see heading into week 2 is, does Tank Dell get more of those targets from CJ Stroud specifically? Like, we can go through, talk about his separation, etc., but it's not going to matter if he's not getting targeted by the starting quarterback, who is CJ Stroud. Now we've gotten reports that like Tank Dell is emerging as the favorite target of CJ Stroud in practice, and that's great. I want to see it in a game. Only target that Dell had from Stroud specifically went for an interception. He just stared him down the hole and picked off. Boom. Didn't look great. But Tank Dell, like I think the interesting thing about him is the way that he creates separation, the way that he manipulates opposing DBs. Like he doesn't need size and he doesn't need strength. You know why? Because he's never around anybody. And that can translate to fantasy, especially in these short yardage situations where I think Tank Dell especially shines, like generating that separation and short yardage. I don't know, like it's really hard to think of somebody off the top of my head who's as good at doing that in short yardage situations than Tank Dell is, even as a rookie. But I want to see him targeted by CJ Stroud coming out of the gate, and I want to see him do so without like broadcasting it via megaphone to the entire opposing defense.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Tank Dell looked awesome. I mean, I know, there was no Robert Woods or Noah Brown last game, so we'll see how much those guys kind of factor in if they
Tank
do.
Dell is a better wide receiver than Robert Woods heading into 2023 and Noah Brown. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
it has to be said. It has to be said.
I'm with you. I'm absolutely with you. It's a matter of if D'Amico Ryans and the Texans give him that chance, right? How much do they value experience over like the talent and youth of Tank Dell, which I know. I love Tank Dell. I like Nico Collins as well. I like Jon Macri. There's a lot of actual decent wide receivers here that could potentially work in. So we'll see how things kind of shake out as we get closer to the regular season. But that to me is the main kind of thing to watch out for, Tank Dell and this Texans wide receiver core for sure. All right, let's go to the Denver San Fran game because the 49ers didn't play any of their starters last week. Who knows if they will for this one, but specifically the Denver Broncos, I'd expect Sean Payton to continue to give this first team more reps after a very shaky start by Russ and the gang in preseason week 1. So Kate, what has you more interested for this one? Or is it the Broncos, or is there a particular 49ers situation that you'd rather look out for?
It's got to be the Broncos because I want to see Javonte Williams. We already heard from Sean Payton. He is playing Javonte Williams, which I think is, kind of crazy. Like you look at the ADP discrepancy between Breece Hall, who, obviously there's going to be a big shakeup now that we have Dalvin Cook there in that offense. But for most of the offseason, he was hanging right around RB10, RB11, RB13. And you had, Javonte Williams coming off the same injury, although, obviously like more severe based on the reports, but, by all accounts had some positive reports in terms of his rehab. He's been just slowly sitting there at RB30 and, just I don't know. I feel like the discrepancy between these two, like if Dalvin Cook had never signed with the New York Jets, I think we'd still see Breece Hall as like RB13. And I'm just wondering what that gap is between Javonte Williams when Javonte Williams actually seems ahead of pace. I expect him to get off to a slow start, but I want to see the reps. I want to see how comfortable he's feeling. I want to see just how much, they feel comfortable utilizing him. Even if he does get the start, but that's something I'm going to be watching really, really closely into this game. And of course, we got to talk about Trey Lance, right? Do we?
Yeah.
Do we got to do that?
We could. Yeah, it wasn't great for Trey Lance, and it's not looking great as far as even potentially getting the QB2 job, right? Like even the
Is Trey Lance
threw.
draftable in 2023? Is Trey Lance draftable?
Earlier in the offseason, I was willing to do it. Now, not so much. I'm not doing it. I just
So
I can't.
Let's just say, John, at the end of your fantasy drafts, waivers open up. Trey Lance clears waivers. Are you pressing add?
Oh God,
Do you hit the green plus sign?
It depends. It's going to depend how big that bench is. Because look, the upside is absolutely there. It's just whether he gets a chance, I think, to even play this season. Because it looks like Brock Purdy is healthy and is going to start the year, right? So unless something happens with Brock Purdy, that's probably the only reason I'm adding Trey Lance. And even then, he's not going to be high on my priority list for waivers because there's always the potential they could just turn to Sam Darnold too for whatever reason. So it sucks for Trey Lance, I think, but I know I had high hopes as well, but this is this is not shaping up to be a very good situation and not very promising for Lance. Hopefully they just trade him.
I mean, I think that would be the best situation. Sam Monson and Steve Palazzolo had a really interesting discussion this week on Trey Lance and like, can they just give him the rest of the preseason to just go get reps? And like, I really wish they would, because I think that is really what he needs. He did look more comfortable as the game went on, but 49ers
I know.
you're on my poo list because I knew Trey Lance was raw coming out. I wanted nothing to do with him like right out of the gate when the price was so high.
Yeah.
But like going into year 2, I was like, there's some potential here. We just got to get him some reps. And the 49ers have deprived me of those the joy that I could. I know Trey Lance wasn't whatever. I'm
It's
bitter.
the 49ers should just be, they should be disappointed in themselves, honestly,
Yes.
because they're the ones that spent up to draft this guy, right? And then he had a chance to start in year 2 and got injured. There was the monsoon game or whatever it was as well, so there just wasn't opportunity for him, and now they've just seemed to completely give up on the guy. And I'm with you. I think give him as many reps as possible here in the preseason. So that would be nice to see. But whether they actually do it, who knows? We'll see.
Do him a favor, ship him out of town. And that's the best thing they could probably like out of respect for Trey Lance. I think that's the best thing they could do. But
Yeah.
out of respect for Trey Lance's dynasty managers, that's the best thing you could do.
I like
Just
it.
saying.
Yeah. Send him to Las Vegas and let him battle with Jimmy G again for the QB1 spot.
The duel
All right.
nobody asked for.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Speaking of Las Vegas, let's do their game here. I mean, it's Raiders, Rams. I don't know. This could potentially be the most inconsequential game of the week. Anybody here that catches your eye?
Probably Zamir White because
Yeah.
it seems like he's kind of got that RB2 position locked up. And Josh Jacobs still not around. He literally got on a plane and said like see you never, and we're still not like talking about that at all.
Yeah.
Like just generally speaking, the ADP has not reflected any sort of concern for Josh Jacobs. The fact that he missed the whole offseason program at this point, still being drafted on average RB8 in ESPN drafts, which feels high for me. Just like I know the upside's super, super high, but I'm a little bit worried that like this man's gonna hold out and refuse to play on his franchise tag because he seems pissed.
Yeah.
He does not like him and Jonathan Taylor are somewhere on a desert island, like with their middle fingers extended to their respective franchises. Like this is not a good situation for either. But again, the draft capital is still super high. But imagine this turns into like a Lev Bell situation and Zamir White comes in like super athletic, obviously had fallen in the draft due to some health concerns, but super explosive,
Mm-hmm.
super speedy. Suddenly, if he comes in and has a potential for like 12 to 14 carries a game, you're in flex territory there. Like
Yeah.
he's a draftable asset at that point. And, I think there could be a lot of value there just with that like home run hitting speed that he has.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely want to watch that pretty closely. But yeah, this is going to be kind of a boring game. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, it definitely is. But Zamir White is interesting, at least. Like you said, if Josh Jacobs holds out into the regular season, this is a great spot for a running back to emerge. It's decent amount of carries in that offense. They run a pretty like running back friendly scheme as well. A lot of they're able to generate yards per carry because of their offensive line and because of the rush scheme that they run as well from data that I was pouring through this offense. So this offseason. So it's really interesting if Zamir White could emerge. I think he's a really nice piece to add late in fantasy drafts just on the potential that Josh Jacobs could hold out. All right, let's go to Dallas and Seattle. This is the last Saturday game here, so we're just about through the preseason week 2 slate. Almost Cowboys Seahawks. This is the late one. I think we got a taste of a couple big name Seattle rookies in Jackson Smith and Jigba and Zach Charbonnet last week. Cowboys didn't give us much, so maybe the most interesting thing to watch in this game is just continuing the Charbonnet and JSN watch. But how about you? Are you interested in anybody else here?
No, I think I'm going to be definitely continuing to watch Charbonnet specifically a little bit more than JSN at this point, just
Mm-hmm.
because, based on ADP, I do think Charbonnet, especially with the fact that like Ken Walker's still not participating in team drills
Mm-hmm.
at this point, missed a lot of time here throughout training camp, and I know Charbonnet missed a little bit of time with the shoulder, but he's back, and I do think, though he started behind DJ Dallas, has a chance to see a good chunk of carries if Kenneth Walker isn't fully healthy to start this season. And Like, let's remember the draft capital isn't all these different between these two.
Right.
Like, there was already some concern regarding a potential split between Walker and Charbonnet. And the closer we get to preseason, the actual season, and the longer that Walker remains out of team drills, the more I worry that Charbonnet can gain that edge if he plays well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's still a pretty big gap in ADP for Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet that makes Charbonnet much more interesting, at least, like you said, because he's actually playing and Kenneth Walker's not. And Charbonnet could absolutely steal some touches there. And especially to start the season, could he see even an even bigger role? So let's go into the lone Sunday game here. The Saints and Chargers. The Chargers were another team, didn't play any of their expected starters last week, though we did get a decent dose of first round rookie wide receiver Quentin Johnston. I don't know if we'll see guys like Kendre Miller for the Saints in this game. He suffered a minor knee injury last week. So again, maybe not that exciting of a game. Anybody here stand out to you?
This is another one that I'm just not
Yeah.
super amped about. I think we can speculate maybe a little bit on the options that the team has at QB2 here for the Chargers.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously Austin Eckler is going to be the main guy here, but is it Isaiah Spiller? Is it like what are we going to see? I don't know.
Yeah.
But regardless, I don't know that the RB2 spot's going to be particularly relevant for fantasy. So,
Yeah, I think even if something were to happen to Austin Eckler, we could see a more of a split for the running back position from the Chargers as opposed to leaning into the one guy like they do with Eckler. And yeah,
yep.
Joshua Kelly started ahead of Isaiah Spiller last week, and who knows, what happens there if one of those guys emerges as the RB2. But yeah, not that interesting. They put it on as the lone Sunday game to force us to watch it, so we will watch it, but we won't be happy about it.
My eyes will be bleeding, but I'll watch
Yeah.
it.
All right, let's wrap it up here with our final game of the week. And this one will be played on Monday night because why not, NFL? Ravens, Commanders. I'm at least glad it's this game that we get on an island versus like Raiders, Rams, or the Sunday game that we just talked about. Something, that there's at least some interesting situations to watch for, including the Commanders quarterback situation and the Ravens wide receiver situation. So which one are you more interested in for this game?
Definitely the Commanders. Just feels like so much value there. Like Sam Howell, one of my favorite ADP values at this point. Just I think a ton of upside between his arm and his mobility as a rusher. A lot to like there. Saw that connection with Jahan Dotson. We've heard amazing things about Terry McLaurin, as usual, who's one of the best wide receivers in the league. I think that Sam Howell can put this team in a really interesting position. Only game he played last year finished as a QB1 thanks to some of that rushing production. Wouldn't at all be surprised to see that continue. Was productive as a rusher last preseason as well. Think there's a lot to look forward to in that Washington offense if it's Sam Howell especially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm excited for Howell this year. I have him as a breakout quarterback option. He had some very encouraging passing numbers at UNC combined with what he did with his legs. He could end up surprising a lot of people by being like a legitimate fantasy starter in 2023. And he's somebody that, yeah, especially in like super flex league, I keep adding him as my QB3. Doesn't matter who my first two guys are that I draft. Sam Howell consistently becomes somebody that I want to roster because there is that upside there. He has some great weapons, like you said, Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson. There's reason to be optimistic for Washington, I think, with Sam Howell as the starter. And he did get the start over Jacoby Brissett last week as well. And we got to see him, use his legs a little bit, picked up a third down conversion with a nice scramble there, made a few nice passes, nothing too, special or anything like that. But it was just, getting him comfortable in the offense again. And I think there's a lot to be excited here.
Yeah, I'm right. I'm kind of excited about this game here. I'm going to admit
Nice.
it. Oh,
Yeah, it's a good one to have on Monday night, I think. And then even with the Ravens, right? Like we only saw Zay Flowers of the receivers played last week. But maybe we get Odell Beckham and Rashad Bateman this week, and we see how these guys kind of rotate in and out amongst each other. So lots to keep an eye on. But that's going to do it for our preseason week 2 preview. Thank you all so much for listening. And Kate, thank you for coming on to help me do this preview. First time on the PFF Fantasy Podcast, but we're going to keep previewing the weeks ahead all season long. How you feeling after this one?
I'm feeling good. I'm wiping some sweat off my brow, and I'm ready for preseason, baby. Let's go. We're gonna help you win some fantasy leagues this year, and I can't wait.
Awesome. Yeah, looking forward to that tonight. And yeah, looking forward to the rest of the season previewing these games with you. But before you go, please let the people know where they can find you and what you have up on pff.com for this offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. You can follow me on Twitter or X or whatever your preferred name for that is, at Kate Magdziuk. It's Kate Magdziuk. Up this week, new on PFF.com. Check out Dynasty winners, Dynasty fallers from week 1 of the preseason. So get in there, do some evaluations, make some trades before things start to kick off for week 2, before we have a whole new trough of information to digest. But there's a couple of sneaky values that you might want to go trade for as soon as possible. I'm just saying.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely go check that out over on pff.com and give Kate a follow on the Twitter or the X or whatever we're calling it these days, like you said. But yeah, excited for preseason week 2. Nate and I will be back on Monday to go over everything we saw in this week's games. Hopefully we get the clarity we were looking for and that we talked about today, because it could only help us clear up some of those ADP discrepancies as we get closer to the season. So looking forward to that. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to the PFF Fantasy YouTube channel and PFF Fantasy Discord. Your support continues to be greatly appreciated there. Again, thank you all for listening. Enjoy the games this weekend. And until next time, peace out.